Story time about how my best friend punched me in the face just to impress a group of boys. A little background information. My best friend did not have a lot of experience with boys. Once she did start talking to boys, this girl did a personality switch as soon as a boy walked into a room. She would usually just act a little bit more of like a pick-me, but never like make fun of me in front of the boys. Well, the one night we went to this party. Her and I like the same guy, which is always a recipe for disaster. But to make sure that there were no issues, we both decided that whoever he liked would get him. Majority of the night, he ends up talking to me. And I didn't really think that there was a problem because she seemed like she was fine with it. Until a little bit later, I hear her screaming, "I want to fight someone." She's like, "Brad, do you know that she can't fight?" He's like, "Oh, you can't fight?" And he goes, "I think you two should fight right now." So then I'm like, "I'm not doing this." And she goes, "No, I think Brad's right. I think we should fight." So then I'm like, "Okay, well, you can have fun fighting somebody else because I'm leaving." She runs outside, grabs me by my hair, and punches me in the face. And just literally actually just beats the shit out of me. I did end up pressing charges on her, but moral of the story, don't be best friends with girls who don't know how to act around men. Story time about how my best friend got over. So a little background information. We were in 9th grade and we were 15 whenever this all happened. We're gonna call my best friend Ethan. Well, Ethan was dating this girl, Brianna, and they broke up after like 7 months of dating. Which, if we're being completely honest, it was for the best. They were toxic as obviously. What does Ethan do after this happens? He comes to his best friends for advice because obviously he still loved Brianna. Anyways, so he comes to me and our other best friend, Matthew, and he's like, "Yeah, like, what should I do? Still love her, still want to be with her, but our relationship was so toxic, da 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 da." And Matt and I were like, no, you do not need her in your life. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I just wish my friends would let me be delusional. Do not sit there and tell me that him and I are the most toxic people on earth when we're together. Tell me that him and I are an amazing couple and we're going to be together. Like, I will literally tell my friend when I want her to let me be delusional. I don't know if that's just me. Anyways, we were not about to let Ethan be delusional. We did not want him near this bitch. I had good intentions. I didn't want Ethan to be with her because of how toxic they were. Matt, on the other hand, anyway, so like I said, we're hyping Ethan up and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? That I don't care if she gets another boyfriend. I don't need her." Well, Ethan, you really shouldn't have said that in front of Matt. Especially the "I don't care if she gets another boyfriend" part. Anyway, so fast forward, Matt ends up getting with Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Obviously, this is going to make Ethan upset. Personally, in my opinion, Brianna was not a nice person. She was one of those girls that was very fake and thought that she was above everybody else. So Ethan goes and talks to Matt and he's like, "Hey, what the happened to, oh, you don't need that, she's toxic, da 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 da, she's this, that, and the next." And I'm just like on the sidelines watching this unfold because I just wasn't getting involved. Anyway, so Matt is like, "Well, you said that you didn't care if she got another boyfriend." When he said that, that did not go over well with Ethan at all. He was not about to have him use that as an excuse to over. So then Ethan goes, "You know, you're my best friend. I trusted you, da 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 da." And then Matt, guess what he does? He just shrugs and he's like, "Well, I don't know what you want me to do." Anyway, so this led to Ethan and Matt physically fighting.
I ain't gonna lie, he was mad as a motherfucker.
Matt ended up with a broken nose and Brianna ended up dumping him. So, you know, he really just like got beat up for no reason. But that's what you get for being a snake. Karma's a bitch. Okay, y'all, today I want to do the cold girl makeup look. Like, I like the icy look, but I also want to mix it with like this glossy look. It looks so pretty. I have a love-hate relationship with blush because I have rosacea, so I hate putting blush on, but this whole look is literally about the blush and looking like you're cold, like you just blew your nose a million times, so your nose is all red because it's irritated as So we're just gonna do eeny, meeny, miny, mo because I don't know what blush is gonna look like what on my skin. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, we're going with this one. Oh my god. Look at that, it's already blending in with my rosacea. Okay, this is turning out more like sunburn. I really feel like this is a trust the process situation, but I feel like I f***ed the process. Okay, and now we're just gonna highlight where I usually would, so like right here. I think a big part of this look is having like at least pinky tinted lips. I'm not gonna lie, this looks like shit, so we're gonna go back to the other lipstick. Okay, this is the finished final look. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Rate it 1 through 10. Story time about how my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. Little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and I have never had a boyfriend before. Any guy that I was sort of talking to, we never made it out of the talking stage. But fast forward, I met this one guy who we're gonna call Jake, and because of how tragic my love life was, I didn't expect us to get into a relationship, but he ended up asking me to be his girlfriend. So of course I said yes. I was super excited that I had a boyfriend, and then he met my family. And my older sister and I were like super close, so I told her all about him, and she just couldn't wait to meet him. Real quick, I just want to give a big shout out to Lumino for sponsoring today's video. Lumino Whitening Kit is one of the best ways to whiten your teeth without paying hundreds of dollars, especially if you have sensitive teeth. This is the next best thing. Although I have veneers, they only cover the front of my teeth, so my teeth can still be very sensitive to certain chemicals that other brands use in their products. If you guys want to go check out their 7-pack for under $15, the link is in my bio. So whenever he met my sister, she was being super talkative to him, and I thought it was just because she was excited to meet him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found out my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. So like I said, he came over, he met my sister, they got along super well. Fast forward, my parents decided to have a family gathering, and my sister was like begging me to invite my boyfriend, which I didn't plan on inviting him at all because my family is super annoying and would make a big deal about the fact that this is my first boyfriend. She was like, okay, but if you guys are seriously in a relationship, I think that he should meet your family. So I ended up inviting him. So my mom called me to the kitchen to help pass out drinks, which was super annoying because my sister was literally doing fucking nothing. So after I'm done with that, I'm looking for my boyfriend and he's nowhere to be found. So I go upstairs, and as I'm about to walk up the stairs, both of them come down. And when I asked what was wrong, like why they were upstairs together, she was like, oh, I was showing him to the bathroom, which I felt super weird about, but because she was my sister, I let it go because you're supposed to trust your family. Part 3 about how my sister got with my boyfriend. So things started to get really sus because every time that he would come over, they would always find a way to be alone with each other. So fast forward, my sister and I are supposed to go to one of her friends' parties. The whole time though, she kept asking me if I would invite my boyfriend. And no offense, I love my boyfriend, but I need space away from him sometimes. And not to mention, I felt like I was dragging him around like a dog because she was the one who would want me to invite him everywhere. Fast forward, I end up inviting him to the party. My sister gets super drunk, really sick, and my boyfriend offers to take her to the bathroom. And I was like, excuse me, I'm her sister. I can do that. Thank you very much. So after I say that, my sister looks at me and she was like, I would appreciate it if you would just stop being like this because I feel super sick right now. Like, okay, play the victim. Anyway, so I go to check on them in the bathroom. They're not in there. And one of the bedroom doors was open, so when I went in there, I saw them doing the nasty. I asked her how long this had been going on, and she said it was since the first time that they met. And now I'm ignoring my sister until she goes to college.
Update on how my boyfriend is threatening to expose our SCX tape if I don't get back with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. Like I said in part 3, he's on his best behavior, and it's been 2 weeks now. I'm constantly being told by him that he's never going to release the tape as long as I stay with him. Now he's acting like the best boyfriend ever. He's treating my parents with respect. He's even given me money to give my parents. You guys won't believe what he did. The day I took him back after he threatened me, asked for permission to come to my house and have dinner with my parents. Like I said before, he wasn't asking for permission to show up at my house. That's when he tells my parents that he wants to take care of us, meaning he wants to give us an allowance. Immediately, my parents were happy. I thought they were going to say no, and my dad was like, absolutely. We love you. We accept you. And now my parents are pressuring me to stay with him because he's giving them money. He's giving my dad $2,500 a month, which is enough to cover the mortgage payment. My parents don't know about the SEX tape, and I don't know if I should tell them. Part 5 is up. My boyfriend is threatening to expose our SEX tape if I don't stay with him. This is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. Now that he's giving my parents money, of course my parents want me to stay with him. This just goes from bad to worse. I actually started falling in love with him again because he's been behaving so good. We've been doing it like crazy, and he's always with me. Even if I'm working in my apartment, he'll just come over and make me dinner, or he'll do my laundry, something he never used to do. 2 nights ago, I asked him why he was still threatening me with the SEX tape. That's when he told me that he had a fear of losing me. I explained to him that he'll never lose me because we have a great relationship. That's when he looks at me and says, as soon as I delete that video, you'll leave me. And he grabbed me by the neck. Part 6 is, my boyfriend is threatening to expose our SEX tape if I don't stay with him. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. That's when he grabbed me by the neck and told me that I belonged to him and that nobody else could ever touch me ever again. I told him that I didn't want anyone else. Once he fell asleep, I took your guys' advice. I looked for the tape and I finally found it. He put it in a safe and he forgot that he told me the code. I immediately left his apartment and went straight home. I went to the cops the next morning and they told me that the only way that I could prove that he was threatening threatening me was if I had a text message or a recording, that they can't just go arrest him because he told me. Here's where you guys are gonna get mad at me. I didn't break up with him. I told him that I would keep the tape. And surprisingly, he accepted. But he doesn't know that I went to the police. My parents still don't know. Still extremely possessive and jealous and is constantly all over me. But I guess I kind of like that as long as he doesn't go back to being crazy. Now I'm just afraid that he'll try to record us again. Or that he has a copy. Oh my god, do you guys think he has a copy? He also bought me a new car 2 days ago. What should I do?
Story time about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime. And I was super excited because I had just got my license. But my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok. And she didn't have the right seasonings for it. So who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she had did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is. So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her? And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter and I was like, I'm going to go tell a Target employee. And she was like, no, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place. And she was like, will you help me check the parking lot because I don't know if she left. She was like, I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car? And she was like, no, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around? And I said, yeah, because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, I think someone's under my car. And she was like, what? No, it's probably just the shadow. And I'm like, no, there's someone under my car. So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
Story time about how my date broke into my house and tried to choke me. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. 2 years ago, I signed up to Hinge. I matched with a really cute guy. Lived in my city, drove an expensive car, and was looking for fun. At the time, I was not looking for a relationship. I just wanted to have some fun. It was lust at first sight. We were both attracted to each other and he couldn't keep his hands off me. Now, I did like this, but he was taking it a little bit far. We're sitting at a booth and had some drinks. This is when he kissed me. He did not ask me for permission and he put his hand on my thigh. I let him do it because I knew I was having fun. But then he started inviting himself over to my apartment. I told him that I was definitely not comfortable with him coming over. He made a joke about following me home and coming in and doing whatever he wanted to me. I laughed it off but was creeped out. I told him I got gassy and that I needed to go home. What was about to happen was terrifying. Part 2 is story time about how my date broke into my house and tried to choke me. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I lied and told him that I was getting gassy and I needed to go home. We say goodbye in the restaurant and he walks me to my car. I drive off and I check if he's following me. No, he wasn't. As soon as I get home, I decide to order pizza because I was still hungry. I mean, I actually was not gassy. While I'm waiting for the pizza to arrive, I run a bath and put my music on as loud as possible. By the way, I live alone and my house is pretty big. I decide to take a quick shower to take my makeup off and 5 minutes into my shower, my phone starts to ring. It's my date. He says, are you sure you don't want me to come over? You look lonely. I told him, how do you know what I look like? Then he says, just send me your address. I did not. I hung up and blocked him right away. I get out of the shower and I hear the doorbell ring. When I open the door, nobody is there. What happens next is terrifying. Part 2 is story time about how my date broke into my house and tried to choke me. I open my front door and nobody is there. Remember, I thought it was the pizza guy. I look closer, and that's when I see a dark figure standing in the corner. Can you imagine how scary that is? My knees instantly started to shake, and that's when I realized it was my date. I told him if he left now, I wouldn't call the cops. Then he runs at me while taking off his belt, puts the belt around my neck and starts squeezing so hard. I almost immediately passed out. I was wearing a bathrobe. He ripped it off of me. Then he said the creepiest thing. I want to see what you look like passed out. Then the doorbell rings. It's the pizza guy. He finally lets go and tells me that he'll be back. I run outside and the pizza guy stays with me until the cops come. Unfortunately, the police never found him. He obviously lied about his name. I'm afraid he's gonna come back for me. What should I do?
Story time about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow in my sleep, so I cut her hair. So a little background information. I was 14 and in 8th grade, and my best friends and I were having a sleepover. And right before we had went to sleep, we were all talking about this one TikTok trend that was going around. It's like this trend where girls would go and put wax on their boyfriends while they were sleeping and then take it off. Well, I didn't think anything of it, so that night I went to sleep. I should have knew this was gonna happen because I'm always the butt of the joke whenever it comes to our friend group. Like, I'm always the one getting picked on. Like, there was this one thing that my friend Ashley saw online. It was like, if you put white nail polish on your teeth, it would make your teeth whiter. So who did they decide to try it out on? Yup, me. And yes, I could have said no, but these were my best friends. I didn't think that they would intentionally hurt me. Anyway, so like I said, I go to sleep and all of a sudden I wake up in the middle of the night to something very, very, very hot on my face. I open my eyes and all of my friends are standing above me with their flashlights on. Like for part 2. Part 3 about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow in my sleep, so I cut her hair. So like I said, nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night. I acted like it was okay because I was plotting in my head that I was going to cut one of their fucking ponytails off. So I go over to their house next week, and every single day that week they were telling me how good my drawn-on eyebrow looked. It didn't actually look good, and none of my hairs were growing back. So around 12 o'clock, all of us are ready to go to bed. I'm laying down, pretending that I'm sleeping, and they think I'm sleeping, so they're over there talking shit about me on her bed, Ashley's bed. I wasn't sure which one's eyebrow I should rip off because the one ripped off my eyebrow, but then the other one put the wax on my eyebrow. They were like, she's sleeping. I don't think she's gonna do anything. She doesn't even have the balls to do anything. So around 4 in the morning, everybody is dead asleep. I get up, and Ashley had her hair in a ponytail. So that was easy enough. I grabbed a pair of scissors out of my book bag, and I cut her hair off. Part 2 about how my best friend waxed off my eyebrow while I was asleep, so I cut her hair. So like I said, went to sleep, didn't think anything was gonna happen, and then I wake up and all of them are standing above me with their flashlights on. And then I realized that Ashley has a stick in her hand. Once I realized that there was wax on the other end of the stick, I started screaming. So then Kelsey decides to cover my mouth. She's like, shh, it's not that bad, I promise, like, don't worry. I get up real quick, I run to the bathroom, and there's like this pink transparent wax on my eyebrow. It was about 3 a.m. and we're all sitting there trying to find ways to get this wax off of my fucking eyebrow. Well, then Amber goes, I'm tired of this, grabs it and rips it off my forehead. So I'm crying at this point. Like, I'm in 8th grade, I'm about to have my glow up, and y'all gotta ruin it with taking my eyebrow off. So nobody went to sleep for the rest of the night because they thought that I was gonna do something to them. So I acted all cool. I was like, no, it's fine, I can just draw it on. When in reality, I was going to cut this bitch's hair. Like for part 3.
Storytime about how my crazy sister tried to steal my husband and my child while I was in the army. My sister and I have always been competitive our entire lives. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime, it's sending me on Instagram. Her and I actually didn't grow up together. We don't have the same mother. We actually met when we were teenagers, which is not a good time to meet your sister because you're already very insecure at that time. She was always a little bit insecure about her looks, and it got a lot worse when she met me. She was always comparing herself to me and asking my dad which one of us he thought was prettier. My dad, of course, would get really upset and tell her not to be like that, but I could tell that she was always judging me. Sometimes she would make fun of the way I dressed, and if I ever wore a tank top or a crop top, she would call me McChubby. Mind you, I am not chubby at all. And even if I was, it's still so wrong to call someone that. Fast forward 10 years later, I married the man of my dreams. We have a really good relationship and a 1-year-old. I joined the army straight out of high school, and I really love it. We finally got pregnant after 3 years of trying. I was told I was going to be stationed away for 2 months. My husband luckily has a job where he can work from home, and my mother lives really close to us, so I knew I was leaving the baby in good hands. My husband luckily supports me in everything I want to do, so he didn't have a problem with this. I would see my sister from time to time, but we never really hung out or anything, and she never really made an effort to meet our baby either. Last I'd heard, she'd been in a really bad relationship. Apparently, she even had to get a restraining order, and she had to move back home to live with my dad. When I finally ended up going overseas, my husband and I would Zoom every single day. This is when things took a dark turn. My husband told me that my sister came by one day to visit, and that she was full on flirting with him, telling him how good looking he is. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. My husband told me that she came over and started flirting with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Sent me on Instagram. He asked me what he should do, and I told him to just act like normal. A few days later, my husband tells me that my sister comes over with a tray of lasagna, which she knows is his favorite dish. And here's the worst part. She brought a thong bikini and sat by the pool for hours. Apparently, she wanted to get a tan. Then she asked him if they could watch a movie together, but my husband made up an excuse saying that he had to get back on his laptop for work. He even took a video of her while she was lounging in the pool, and we both laughed at it. A few days after that, he tells me she comes over crying. Apparently, some guy wouldn't leave her alone, so she asked him if she could sleep over because she didn't feel safe. She decided to walk around the house in her underwear and an oversized t-shirt. But here's what really got to me. Apparently, she was making an effort to get to know the baby, so she would go out of her way to feed him and play with him. And out of nowhere, the baby calls her mama. She never made an effort to see the baby when I was there, so why was she making an effort now? Then my sister sent me a picture of my husband and the baby asleep on the couch. And she sends me another message saying, "Your husband is so beautiful." Part 3 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. After she sent me the picture of my baby and my husband sleeping on the couch, I asked her what she was doing there. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Sent me on Instagram. Then she had the audacity to tell me that she just wanted to help my husband out. I told her that he didn't need any help and that she could leave the house. That's when she asked me if I was insecure about her being around my husband since she's so attractive. As soon as she said that, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. Then she decided to ignore my phone calls and messages for 2 days. So I called my husband and told him what she said. The first thing he did was reassure me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that he would tell her to leave himself. I didn't want her to start any drama in front of the baby, so I told my husband to just let her stay another night. Instead, I called my dear dad and I told him everything that she was doing. I even told my dad that he needed to go pick her up right away. My dad didn't even question me. He just went to get her. He knew exactly what she was like. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my husband laughing his head off. He tells me my dad came into the house and told her that she needed to leave with him. When she refused, my dad simply grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. And on the way out, he could hear my dad asking her what she thought she was doing. He even told her to stop walking around in her underwear around my husband. I only wish I could have seen it myself. But it doesn't end there. My sister decided to sneak out of my dad's house and back to mine. And this time she wore lingerie underneath a coat. When he opens the door, she takes off the coat, revealing the lingerie. My husband politely asked her to leave, but she said she knew he wanted her. Then he just shut the door in her face. I got home a few weeks after that and I confronted my sister. She told me that I'm a bad wife for leaving my husband and my child, and that eventually he's gonna end up cheating on me. She denies having come to the house with the lingerie on. How should I handle the situation? Should I tell my dad or just let it go?
Story time, my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information. So Gavin and I had been best friends ever since we were little. We lived in the same neighborhood, and my parents and his grandparents were like pretty close, I guess. But like everybody in our neighborhood was close with each other. And I always had a huge crush on him. And I would try to like subtly tell him that I liked him. But he would always be like, "Ew, don't joke with me like that. Like, that's not true." And eventually, I just kind of got the hint that that was his way of telling me, "I don't like you. Stop before I tell you," in a mean way. So when we were in middle school, he was always having these like 2-day relationships with all these girls and everything. And me, not so much, because sis didn't have a glow up until she reached like her sophomore year in high school. And the thing was, I wasn't that best friend who would be like, "Ew, don't date her, like she's ugly," or anything like that. Like, I would totally respect all of his relationships, even if they were 2 days long, but he would literally still block me. Well, the one day we were hanging out at his house, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So like I said, the one night I was at his house and he was on my phone and he was asking me who all these guys were on my Snapchat. And I told him that I had been talking to them and he was just being super toxic. He was talking shit on every single one of them. So eventually I started dating this guy, Trey, and after that he texted me saying that I was gross and everything else, when the next day he literally got a girlfriend. But weirdly enough, he didn't block me that time. He actually started texting me more, saying how him and his girlfriend were so happy together, da-da-da-da-da. And unlike him, I would be supportive. Well, the one night at 2 a.m., he came over my house, and he was like, "I don't have feelings for my girlfriend." And I'm like, "Okay, then why are you with her?" And then he has the nerve to say, "Don't you get that I like you?" Like, really? Well, eventually we cut off all communication and he was still with this girl. Well, the one night he asked me to come over and talk, and we ended up doing the nasty. And then he blocked me on everything, after he said we should both leave our girlfriends and boyfriends. Well, I ended up telling his girlfriend what we did, and they also come to my family cookouts.
Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her, until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend, she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2.